but it's Friday morning here in South Carolina. It's Friday afternoon over in L'Eau, in the southwest of France.
In les Lots de France.
Oh, ben oui. And it is Friday morning early on the West Coast where Mr. Sanker would hang out there in Oregon. And it is indeed Friday morning in Calgary, Alberta, where Patty is. And so we're in different time zones. Isn't that weird how that happens? Time zones, they're the weirdest thing, I think.
Do you know what else is really weird right now? And I don't know if you've realized it. Oh, okay. Besides that, but did you realize it's episode 26? Do you realize that since we're in different time zones, that is half a year's worth?
Yes,
of episodes.
It is indeed half a year's worth of episodes, and it's just so strange that we would have that. Just weird. And there we are.
How did it get this far?
Our lovely logo.
I love the way you worded that. Literally, how did we get this far, you guys? Literally.
Without running out of something to say.
We're not really sure how we got this far, but here we are.
And Mother just said I would never amount to anything.
I'm not going there. Okay, so today's title is Jamming with an Audience, but none of us have musical instruments, but you don't really need a musical instrument, but it's not really about music. We're just going to talk about music. It's kind of an analogy for what we're talking about. But first of all, just to review, there's no quiz involved. Patty, Greg, Roy, Simone, and we all have some connection to the world of technology and change and management of organizations and stuff like that. And a little bit later on, we'll tell you how to get a hold of us. But we're here every Friday, and what we've been doing here for the last few episodes is having a designated. I'm going to stop right there. That word, it's interesting. Here's English for you. It's designated,
but it was designed.
If you take the aided off the end, it's designed. See that?
It was designed.
We designed with a designated person to do the interviewing, and today's designated interviewer is Simone.
Be afraid.
So, Simone,
be very afraid.
Very afraid.
Be very afraid.
Oh, Wednesday Addams. She has so many fans. Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Well, it's Friday. It's Friday afternoon for me. Patty, did you get the Baileys in your coffee?
Not Baileys, but I did get coffee, which really is the elixir of the gods anyway.
Yeah. I was on a conferencing thing yesterday, and because it's my afternoon over here on the other side of the world, and so someone said, and I said, well, they're having coffee, and I said, oh, I'm having a lemonade, and some of you that know me so well, one of them came back and said, with anything else? Which kind of reminds me of what we're talking about, because if you're going to have a jamming session, it's pretty hard to do it on your own, right? You actually need to collaborate. You need to kind of chime in. You want to have a play session, which is exactly kind of what I think we do. Play what? I'm not quite sure about yet, but I'm sure we'll discover that, especially for this one. So let's see, jamming with the audience. There is such a difference about being in the basement versus being on stage, and how much of ourselves do we put into each or either, or are we just wearing another costume? So I think that kind of helps us understand where we might be going with this. And I'm kind of going to start with you, Greg, because we've all actually spoken at conferences. We've all been in front of training classes, and we've run workshops and things like that. And quite frankly, I find running a workshop and a training class so much easier than being in front of a conference audience. Different kinds of stages, right? So, but what makes it so perfect? Is it practice that makes us perfect? how do we know when we've practiced enough to be
Ew.
ready to perform? Yeah.
Well, so you're asking me, right?
Oh yeah, that is
Like,
so at you.
Greg, since you're so far from perfect, maybe you could enlighten us. Well, you know, the saying is practice makes perfect, and so we all practice, right? And I think that's really, really important. But one of the things that I think is really compelling about perhaps what I've learned in the past however many years is that there's a time to stop practicing and start doing. There's a time when you need, so musically for me, it's like, you know, guitarists are always in their bedroom playing. I've said that before on the broadcast. Go out and play with other people. Use those skills that you've been honing and interact with other people. And one of the reasons for that is exactly that authenticity or that genuineness. Is when you're by yourself, I don't think you get challenged. You don't get curves thrown at you. Your world is essentially the way you say it is. But when you're jamming with a group of people or interacting with a group of people, particularly if it's something creative or where the end isn't you know very, very clear, is you have ideas that come in that might not have been your ideas. Is that good? Is it bad? Does it challenge me? Does it open me up? So I think there's an addiction to perfection. It's like, I'm not ready to speak in front of an audience. I'm not yet ready to apply to be a manager. I'm not ready to whatever your thing is your challenge. I'm not ready because I'm still practicing. And I think I mentioned before, my very first management job, I was encouraged to apply by the manager. And I honestly wasn't ready. I felt I wasn't ready. And so, you know, the job was posted, it closed on Friday, and Friday, you know, near end of day, he comes behind me in my cubicle and I'm at my keyboard and I say, hey, what's up? And he goes, you got to apply for that job. And I gave him the old, I don't know. And he gives me a whomp on the shoulder and says, apply for the job. And I interviewed, he gave me the job. And as it turned out, I wasn't ready, but he coached me and he grew me and he developed me. And that was the path that I went down, that had I said I'm not ready, I wouldn't have gone all of these years and learned everything that I learned. And so for me, practice makes perfect is kind of a curse in a way. It's like, well, I'm not good enough, so I'm going to keep practicing. And I feel like there's truth to just get out there, see where you're at. Then you know what to go back and practice, right? But you're doing it. Now you're acting.
I think that's exactly right. I sort of wonder, I was thinking about that job analogy and actually getting a job. And there's been a number of times where it says, you know, dress for the role that you want. You know, it's a performance, you know, it's like, yeah, if I want that role, how do other people dress for that role? How do they look in that role? And then even sometimes when I actually got the job and I've gone, oh crap, now I've actually got to make it happen. Yep. So it's like head down, tail in the air, and work your behindy off to actually learn everything you need to learn. So I'm going to switch over. So no matter how much practice and preparation that you do, Roy, can we still be honest and authentic when it comes time, no matter how much practice or preparation we've done? Or is it just a show?
He's on mute.
He is on mute. He's muted.
I am a mutant. And I think that the practice is what part of what makes you authentic. And let me explain what I mean by that. There's also something called over-rehearse, which I'll get into in a second. When you practice, you absorb the fundamentals of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's music or a sport, whatever that is. You absorb that. It becomes part of you, and you practice and practice and practice, and you develop the muscle memory, you develop the brain cells, whatever it is that you're working on. It becomes part of you. And then, so when you do go to perform that, whatever it is, that musical piece that you've been rehearsing or that sport that you've been practicing for, it's coming from you naturally. Now, over-rehearsed, yeah, that's when the edge starts to go off. And sometimes, you know, I've seen music recitals or musical performances where the person was just rehearsed to death, or that webinar you were on where the person is just talking exactly, without missing, and no expression, and just running right. They're saying everything that they practice to say, but they've practiced it so much that they've lost the meaning. It's the priest I used to know where I grew up, who used to be able to go through a 7 a.m. mass in 12 minutes. It's that, just firing off those prayers in Latin as fast as possible to get it done, and without any real understanding or thought about what was going on. So there is an edge there, but Spanish, la práctica es el maestro, practice makes the master. We say practice makes perfect in English, but is perfect authentic? Maybe not. Maybe we have to go back to what I said last week about being asymptotic, never quite getting there.
Yeah, I think that is actually part of it. I like the Spanish, instead of practice makes it perfect. I think practicing to evolve and hone our craft, whatever that craft might be, I think becoming a master or mastering is, I think the Spanish way of saying it is far better than the English translation, if you get. So it's really hard to be so open and on all the time. You know, it's exhausting, quite frankly, to be on stage, whether it's as a leader or, you know, a musical performance or whatever. So Patty, if you're actually leading a change, because you have to be on, you've got to be there and hold the energy for everyone else. So when you're coaching a leader through this kind of change, how would the progression through music apply to them? How will they find their rhythm, find their melody to get through that?
You know, there are some leaders that they say he knows the lyrics, but he cannot hear the music. And I think that's a really important description, because you have to hear the music. And by hear the music, I mean mastery of being able to lead someone through change involves really dealing with that complex adaptive system. So just like moving from, I've practiced a lot on my own and I think I'm good enough to practice with people, when you get into a jam session, you're not just learning and challenging yourself, but you might be stepping into a group that has 3 other people in it. And with those 3 other people in it, you've actually got to fit yourself into their rhythm, right? And as a leader who's managing through change, there's 3 main areas. You've got to stabilize things. You've got to make sure that the business is going to keep going through the change regardless. And then there's the sway. This is where there's going to be a whole bunch of things. You have to be like that resilient tree, right? You're going to be able to sway with whatever's going to hit you throughout. And that's going to take some experimentation. And so you have to come at it with a mindset like a beginner, like somebody who's just starting out. You've got to take a step back and say, okay, I might know everything I know for running the operations of this business, but what got us here isn't going to get us there. So I've got to be willing to go with the flow of the sway of what's going to hit me, and that's experimentation, and that's really digging through the actions to review whatever it is that you're testing and trying and moving through iteratively. And you've got to have enough willingness to jam with others to lead that change. And then you've got to try and figure out how to get them to grow, right? Okay, you've got to get to that grow phase.
So let's just stay with that thought a moment. So what is the difference for a leader then, playing to an audience or playing to their team that they're leading versus jamming with them? What's the key things there?
If you're playing to an audience, it's performatory. It's like, it's about you. I'm the leader. I've got all the right things. I'm going to tell you what to do. You know, when you think about it, there's a Latvian conductor named Maris Janssens who said, I'm not going to be a new boss saying, I'm going to do this or that. We'll start to work and then we're going to make good concerts, right? It's about really understanding that you do have a complex adaptive system, and there are a number of people throughout the organization, all the way to the front lines, that are going to be able to contribute to making that transformation successful.
Yeah, I still find though there is great skill in understanding that you still need a costume, you still need a performance sometimes, because there are certain things that we want to bring to those conversations, or how we're working with our teams and our other people. So Roy, how does it, something that we've worked very hard to get, how can we still make it appear as spontaneous? What are those performing tricks of the trade so it still is spontaneous?
I think you have to be spontaneous. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about internalizing things. I mean, during the time when I was playing music professionally, which is over 20 years, I might have played a song thousands of times. And I would hope that it didn't come out like just, it's, and I've heard musicians make fun of the fact that they've had to play the song thousands of times.
Yeah.
There has to be some sparkle of being able to emotionally relate to what the meaning was in the first place.
Yeah.
So again, having internalized that and being able to get back to that place that where things are authentic, and being able to present from that spot. So even though you might be saying the same words or singing the same chorus, you are reaching into yourself and pulling that out of you, and and that's what makes for authenticity, right? Coming from yourself.
Yeah. I think there's a balance point though, because there are some things where I guess that nervousness of wanting things to be perfect. So all you recovering perfectionists out there, like I used to be as well, that just turns you into control freak, and it's not a very good thing. So you lose the spontaneous way of yourself, I think, when that happens. So I think that there's still a balance of where you want to have practiced enough or rehearsed enough that you feel comfortable. But, there are some people, so Greg, there are some people just don't like to rehearse because it takes time and effort as well. And they say, no, I just want it to be fresh. I'm going to bring it off the cuff. But that is so different. Like, extroverts do it differently to the way introverts do it. And like, we're going to walk out on that conference stage, or we're going to be in front of that meeting just in front of our team. And you're just going to go off the cuff, or what's that balance between practice and off the cuff?
So Roy just said something I think really, really important is connecting with, I forget how you put it, Roy, but the emotion behind it. There's a meaning to music. There's a meaning to a lyric. And it's emoted through the articulation, through the instrumentation, through the expression. I know B.B. King infamously said this, pointing to his guitar, this is not the instrument, this is the instrument. This is just an amplifier. And I, at first, when I heard him say that, I didn't know exactly what he meant, but what he speaks when he plays. Most musicians do. I knew two sisters, both very accomplished pianists. One was a hopeless analytical, and the other was a hopeless emotional expressive. And the scariest thing to her would be, to miss a note or to have something wrong in the technical performance. The other wanted to connect with her audience. And it was fascinating to see two people who were so similar be very, very dissimilar. One of my worst presentations ever was when I was so rehearsed and so focused on the words that I had planned to say, that I did exactly what Roy had said. Is I said it as rehearsed, and it was a terrible, terrible presentation. Since then, I've done that scary thing of, I don't have a script, but I know my material well. I go over it and I go over it. I understand the points. I address it sideways. I go back and forth, because I own this material. This is my material, and you can't take me off script. In fact, I enjoy people asking me questions or biffing me, because it's like, I know this, and I express what I feel and what's authentically me. And I give my answers, not my rehearsed answers. I give my truth as I understand it, as opposed to those words and that fearfulness of being stuck to the script. I know a very high level performing bassoonist of all things, and we were discussing music, and I was saying, playing blues is fun because it's just, you play what you feel. And she said, that's the scariest thing that I could possibly imagine, because for her it's play the notes, and I'm kind of the opposite.
Yeah, Patty, I know that that's something that you're really keen to chat about. So add your 2 cents worth into what Greg's just said there.
So I think there may be some confusion out there that if you're authentic, you haven't done your planning, right? I think being authentic means really, truly having some compassionate empathy for the people you're working with. That doesn't mean you don't walk into it. So for instance, if we're doing a transformation or change, or we're coaching leaders, it's about really doing the hard work so that you can be authentic. And that's knowing the vision, understanding the purpose for the transition, making sure that people have what they need to know to feel comfortable and safe, and that you're going to guide them through there. The authentic piece is doing it with them. You know, we talk about being ready, willing, and able. And able is being an active participant, which means that you are engaging and you are having those conversations, but mostly you're actually trying really hard to learn more than you're pushing, right? So there's the constraints you've designed, and then there's the learning you have to do. And that's how you can build that authenticity.
Yeah. Roy, you're pretty strong in this area, and I'll preface this by saying that you know, we know an awful lot of people in our technology industry, and it was amazing at the end of the conferences if someone found a piano, and there's a few other mates that we have that brought their little portable guitars with them, and there's, you know, those of us that sing. There's an awful lot of musicians in the technology industry, like doing the day job, because let's face it, music doesn't pay an awful lot. So, is this a good analogy? Is music a good analogy for us to use when we're talking about this stuff?
Yeah, I think it's a fine analogy to use. There are lots of things that I find similar in whether I was preparing to go out and do a concert in front of a few hundred or a few thousand people, or whether I'm preparing a presentation on a technical topic. It's really the process is the same, right? And just going back for a second to what you said about there being a lot of musicians in technical field, it's astounding to me how many musicians were in both the scientific and the technical side of the laboratory where I used to work. The network administrator was the conductor of the town band. The systems administrative manager was a lead player in a bluegrass band. Music is mathematics, and
Yeah.
it's not mathematics to a lot of people who do it, but it is mathematics. It's strictly mathematical. And if you understand that on a really deep level, then a lot of other things tend to fall into place. Technology doesn't seem so foreign to you once you realize that it's math and you can do this.
Yeah, let me challenge you on that just a little bit, because yes, true, it is a mathematical language. There is no doubt about that is what music is. And we all, those of us that have worked in tech field, I mean, I used to work an awful lot in radios and things, and, you know, all that frequency stuff. And that sound, it's music, right? It definitely is mathematics. But I learned to play my music by ear. I didn't, you know, it took me a long time to, you know, you have to count the ledger lines and read where the notes were, right? But I used to learn and play by ear. So I used to come at music from the right brain side, from the emotive, from how I felt, because my mathematics ability, well, I wasn't really fond of maths. So how do we cope with that? Because you've got leaders in the industry that come from one or both sides and have trouble integrating that.
I will tell you that I also learned to play by ear. I learned from a very early age. My brother was a trained classical pianist, and I would go and sit at the piano and pick out tunes that he had in fact been practicing. And then when I started to play my own selection of music on guitar and percussion and whatever, it was primarily by ear. I did take some lessons. I got the rudiments, right? That's the important part. I got the rudiments. I didn't go
Yeah.
through all the advanced lessons. I
Mhm.
got the basics. But I still know that I remember having a discussion with somebody who's the daughter of a pretty famous jazz music promoter. And she was talking about percussion, and I explained to her how mathematical percussion is. Well, there's, 4 beats, and then you can divide that by 2, and then you can divide it by 3, you can divide it by 6, and so forth and so on. And I was playing the different beats, and she was like, I never knew there was so much math involved. The light bulb goes on, It's really astounding because you hear it and you feel it, but you might not be aware of it.
Yeah. Patty?
I think that's absolutely it. And when we started, I said they know the lyrics, but they can't hear the music. And there are some leaders who are like that. They just can't feel it. And I'm a dancer. My husband and I do a lot of dancing, and not professionally, but but we have an awful lot of fun. And it really is all about hearing it and feeling it. So when you're connecting authentically with an audience, whether it's you're speaking or it's what you're feeling with them. So it's a with them kind of thing, right? It's authenticity isn't about the mechanics behind it. But if you don't have the mechanics behind it, that's like jamming with an audience as opposed to performing with an audience.
Yeah.
Is really about what you're hearing, feeling, thinking, and connecting with.
Yeah. Greg, I'm going to throw one at you,
All right.
as I like to
Bring
do.
it on. Bring it on.
I mean, one of the things that you said earlier was that, like, you know your stuff, and you know your stuff. So when you know your stuff really well, you don't have to have it over rehearsed. It doesn't matter if you get wobblies thrown at you. Any of those that, if you've been on a workshop where I've been part of Greg's participants,
Yeah.
yeah, he knows that I'll do the yebbit and throw something at him but why, type of questions. So I'm going to throw a but why at you around this, because, this balance that we have to have with jamming with an audience versus just doing it with ourselves. I mean, why is this so important?
Why is it important? So one of the things, I've done some keynotes more recently, and I'm talking about higher level, more like organizational change, design, transformation, and things like that, which it's not nearly as analytical as here's the process, or here's the practice, or here's a story about how we approached improving our service desk call closure rates, or things like that. It's a lot more kind of getting in your space. And what I've found is when you're standing in front of especially a large group, it is a bizarre situation where there's a tremendous amount of vulnerability standing on stage. And I believe that the people in your audience, they know if you're being integrous with yourself. They instinctively know. And so you find that unless you're a tremendous actor performer, which I'm not, the only opportunity that you have to be relevant is to be you, to be genuinely, authentically you. And you don't find that out. You challenge yourself. You find yourself saying things and asking yourself, is that really true? Do I actually believe that? That's the storyline, but do I believe that? And so I think it's really true, or it's really important to get out there and to know your stuff, but then to go out and explore and find out, through exposing yourself to people who do challenge you, or just kind of that that exposure, if you will, where you're really, really vulnerable. And I think it really matures you as a person. It really challenges you intellectually and spiritually about who you really are and what you really believe. And when those things in your life start aligning, people get it. People see you and they go, now that's genuine. Because I think two people can say the exact same words, and one person you'll believe and the other you won't.
Well,
Why is that?
That leads me to my next question for you, and I just want to lead off on that because, and I know Roy will really get this too, because those of us that, we will play or sing a cover of another song, right? And interesting for me because and things change over the years. And I think this is Patty, I want you to pick up on this later, that our leadership styles, the things we do can change as we evolve and grow. And the same with our voices and the way we play, the style or the way we feel changes. So I've noticed too, just even trying to find the right songs that fit who I am at the moment, but I'm singing someone else's music, someone else's lyrics. How do you, I mean, from a leadership perspective, we're now doing a cover of what someone else did in that role before. So how do we take those lyrics? How do we take the lyrics of the organization? How do we take that melody or their music and the bass that they have and still turn it into something that's ours that we can add to and create that authenticity?
So I think you hit on something really important. When you're working for a corporation, particularly, you will be handed a script in certain cases. This is the party line. This is the plan. This is what we're doing. And you may or may not be 100% in alignment with that. And so as individuals, I've done this, dozens, maybe hundreds of times. And as a leader, you get to make some fundamental choices. I can stay and support this organization and their mission, or I can leave. And if you stay, then I can either be authentic or I can be inauthentic, and that would equate to being ineffective as a leader. So for me, it's you have to find something in that script that you connect with. It's what actors do all the time, method acting. It's like, I can say your lines because I feel something similar in my heart. I remember that trauma in my life or something that I've been through, that I can bring those emotions to this script that isn't my own and make it my own, make it authentic.
Yeah, and I think that is making it your own. So, Roy, you touched on something earlier in regards to that too, about how much we prepare or being over-prepared, because I think that's a real trap based on what Greg's just been saying.
Yeah, I think if it comes off like you're just parroting a bunch of words that were handed to you, right? That will immediately flag you as being inauthentic. And I think thinking about what you said, Greg, where you're in essence handed a script that you have to deal with, I think what you have to do is find the parts of that message that do resonate with you. Maybe not every word, maybe not every thought in that will resonate with you, but there will be parts that will, and you have to grasp those, internalize that, and then base your message on that. And I think that's what can turn the corner from being inauthentic to being authentic. So not over prepared. And when I think about these things, the authenticity, inauthenticity of leaders in front of a bunch of people, I'm reminded of some of the recordings of Jeff Skilling in front of the Enron employees, or Ken Lay telling them, yes, you should invest all your money in your 401k here at Enron. Meanwhile, things are completely falling apart. They're just flat out lying to people, but they're projecting this friendly manner as if this is all true. The employees were starting to see through that at the time. There's no doubt in my mind. Could they do much about it? No. But you can't just parrot the lines. You have to find the message, and there's a difference between what the words are and what the message is, and you have to try to reconcile those and bring it out of yourself.
Okay, so let's, Patty, let's start looking at the do. What do people need to do about this? Where are we going to take it?
I've been a facilitator for longer than my children have been alive. And I'm not going to tell you how old they are because then I'll date myself. In facilitation, one of the things we do, say I'm doing a strategy session or an IT stabilization session where we go through and we look at governance or anything like that. I have my facilitation planned minute to minute to minute. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit, Roy, on that over-prepared piece, because I think over-prepared is okay so long as you understand as a facilitator, when I come in and I'm doing a facilitation, I have to read the room. I have to feel what the people are feeling. I have to understand what they're doing. I've got to have a few things in my back pocket that weren't part of the original thing that I planned minute by minute. And I can tell you with every single one of the facilitations I've done, there are 3 or 4 that activities or whatever that I throw out the window because I'm reading the room and I'm caring about where they're going. And the goal is to get them to help lead you through, even though you've done this massive preparation. So I think the important thing is to really understand that, sure, you're going to go through these iterative stuff. Hopefully you're going through iterative stuff. You're learning to sway through anything that's difficult or troublesome or the change. And you're looking at analyzing and experimenting and learning. But what you take in that learning, how you strategically move it, you've got to have a mission, a roadmap, plans. But those have to be built with that huge human system that has all of the knowledge within your organization. So that's going to take a growth mindset. That's going to take somebody who's willing to learn before you can even think about what's the best strategy. If you sit and you play in your room, you're not going to hear what those other players are playing. And when you join the other players, you can't take what you did in the room with you. You have to listen so you can play, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, see, that reminds me of thinking about what was about 2-3 weeks ago. I went and did a jam session. It was the first time I was having a jam session with one of the other guitarists. The other one I'd worked with a little bit before. And we were working out a couple of different new songs. And the interesting thing was, sometimes it's a song you like to sing, but it's not right for your voice and you just shouldn't be singing it. It's just like, so there's this thing, like, no matter how much practice that you do, you still got to find the right music for you. You still got to find the right song. You still got to find the right key. Sometimes it's just the key that's off. It's not necessarily the song itself. So, Greg, think about that. Leaders born, made, talent, natural talent versus practice talent, or sometimes we just got to switch.
Well, so that's a really good question. Nurture or nature, right? It wouldn't be an episode of a podcast without saying, Steve Jobs was one of the world's greatest leaders, blah, 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 which some people that knew him well wouldn't agree with that. But he had a natural charisma, if you will. He presented exceedingly well. And so I've heard, there's natural born leaders and then there's the rest of us. But I think the analogy of music is really, really good, because there are people who are gifted at music. And so their musicality is something of a discovery of, wow, let's see how far I can take this. That's something I have. And then for others, it's a journey. You work hard. Famous violinist who practiced incessantly, and I'll throw his name in the link, Jashka Haichits, something like that, Russian violinist. And he was asked, why do you practice so much? And he said, if I miss one day of practice, I know. If I miss 2 days of practice, the critics know enough. If I miss 3 days of practice, the public knows. His point being, you've got to hone your craft. You've got to develop the gifting that you have. And he was a gifted person. So I think the opportunity in front of us is all of us have some form of a gifting. If you want to do a TED Talk in your life, a lot of people aspire to that, or publish a book. You may not be gifted in those things, but you're gifted in other things. You be you, right? And so you hone your craft, you develop the skills, and you work very, 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 very hard to make it look very easy when you actually perform it. One last analogy is like that. I'm a guitarist, or at least there's guitars that I play, and guitarists frequently will play scales. Like we'll run the scales, and we do it incessantly, right? That's why guitarists are annoying, because during a practice or a jam session, they're constantly going they're always adding something to what they're doing. They're running scales, but you never perform scales. You don't perform scales. And that's the difference, right? So you get yourself into a musical situation where somebody says, like, oh, I got to throw this in. So I was doing a gig once, and it was a birthday party for one of the band leader's wives, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, second set, Elvis impersonator is going to come in, and we're going to do blah blah blah." I'd never played any of those Elvis songs before in my life, and fear struck in me. Right? I just like, what do I do? And so I went to my strengths that I had developed, and I said, I know this. I know what key it's in. I know what the progression is. And by the time we were done, we were having a ball, and everybody was enjoying us, right? So I wasn't rehearsed, but I was well rehearsed in my craft, in my skills, and what I was doing. So I think the emphasis in my mind would be, don't look so much at the, well, I could never do that, I'm not gifted. Look at, what can you do with what you got? For me, that's why I talk so much about excellence. Excellence isn't about being the best or falling off a log and saying, "Holy cow, I'm a world-class athlete," or whatever. It's, you have to work really hard at whatever you do. So look at it from a growth mindset. Look at it from a, how can I be better than I was? And let's see how far I can take this. And I think that's something that really resonates with me professionally, because I think so many of us look at, I could never do that. That would be me. It wouldn't work for me. And it's like, there's all this negativity, as opposed to, let's see how far we can take this. Let's have fun with it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Patty, so we've got our sort of few minutes now where we're going to sort of summarize what we think about all of this, but what is it for you? What did you find that you felt that you've been gifted with in terms of the leadership, and what did you find that were things that we want to hone our craft and become what we want to be?
We talk a lot throughout all of our episodes of, I don't know where I'm going, but I know who I want to be when I get there. And I'm going to back up just a little bit for a little story. My son was learning the trombone. And I don't know any other parent that has ever had a child who is learning the trombone, but I got to tell you, when they're first learning, it is hysterical. I mean, you've got tears coming down your eyes because they're blowing notes, right? And which might sometimes sound more like flatulence than actual music. And I think it was neat to watch my son progress. And
My career in a nutshell, by the way, Patty.
So honestly, my son was incredible. He moved from blowing notes to actually being part of a stage band where he literally was writing scores for specific things and performing it, and did a fantastic job. But what was really unique about it was the ability not to care what others thought about his learning. He was moving through that, but he also was willing to fly his freak flag. And I think this is what's really interesting, bringing who you really are to it. And when I think about the musicians, the artists, everyone, it's their style that they bring into it. I've been to so many piano concerts with young children as they were moving through learning piano, and there's the mechanical, technical wizard who has no emotion and no feel. They can't create. And the musicians I loved were the ones who brought them to the table. They had humor, they had engagement, they had life. And when you're looking at leadership and you're thinking of that ball of wax, we have to stop worrying about who we're presenting or how we're presenting, and be more outward looking. Fly your freak flag, be yourself, be your authentic you, but also be willing to have the vantage point of how is that received and how am I being kind in that.
I think
Yeah,
we have Patty's birthday present all picked out. Now we're gonna get her a freak flag.
Man, that is just going to be such an incredible design. I can see
And then we can ask her publicly, Patty, are you flying your freak flag
freak
today?
flag. Yeah, but
And I will say, yes, I am.
I'll pick on you, Patty, because it's a funny saying. But I think, well, actually, let me ask you, what do you mean when you say fly your freak flag? Plain English. What does that mean? How do I do that?
That means bring your personality to it. Bring who you are. Bring your humor. Don't try to put yourself in this can. You know, I know a lot of people who become a first-time boss, and suddenly they feel like they have to be this boss, you know, and they put on this persona that isn't them, and it's never successful. It falls flat every single time. I think that we are not compartmentalized. We're not that person with that role at our organization. We are people with lives and talent and fun and interests and all of those kinds of things. Bring those to the table. If you want to wear funky glasses of different color every time you're on KTLO, do it. Fly your freak flag. Be you, right? Be that person you are inside. That's what attracts people to want to work with you, is that you're being yourself.
so Greg, come on. What's your gifted freak versus your practice talent freak?
Wow, talk about put me on the spot. You know, it interestingly enough is Roy and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and one of the things when Roy and I, you know, met each other face to face back when that was a thing, is we both, yeah. When you stand up next to Roy, nobody's witty, but I fancy myself kind of witty and playful with words and phrases and nuances, and one of his flavors. I'm picking on you, Roy, because I'm trying to get the freak flag off of me. But one of the things that Roy does was he inserts elements of philosophy and worldviews and higher order thinking in humorous sort of ways. And I've always fancied myself in that space as well. And sometimes those things fall flat and sometimes they don't. But that's one of those areas that, me being me, I'm going to say things. I'm going to put in a turn of phrase. I might say something, you know, sarcastic, or I know you're shocked that I would ever be sarcastic. That's me being me. But you know, there's limits to that. I mean, I'm also famous for, you know, when a situation turns deadly serious, like somebody comes in and tells me that I have to leave. My mom is in the hospital. I'm famous for saying, well, it's kind of hard to make a joke out of that, right? Because that's not funny. And I turn deadly serious. So it's like there's that kind of that awareness of that is something that is inside of me. My freak flag includes that. Patty, I blame you. Now I'm saying freak flag like it's some sort of a thing.
It is a thing.
It is a thing. It is a thing. And Greg, just be thankful that, you know, one of the things that I've always loved when I've been in on your workshops and stuff, when we've been able to do all the face-to-face stuff, as you can see, the wind is starting to whip up here. So yeah, I'm getting the wind up, Greg. So is that be thankful. I haven't put up the photos of your change management dance.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So everyone, like, Greg has this amazing way when he presents. We talk about authentic and we talk about talent. And he didn't realize this. Actually, it's on Twitter somewhere. I must have done it during the conference. But Greg has this great way of expressing as he moves. And he's like, and it's amazing. So he is like the when he's talking about change management, this man has the dance moves, definitely.
It's the change management tango, is it not?
It's the change. Oh no, this man knows how to salsa and a rumba and the change like you would not believe. Anyway, so Roy.
Over to you, Patty.
No, she's too busy doing the tequila. Roy, what's your freak flag?
What is, oh, I have many. I think, I'm not sure who I am today. Yes, I am. I could, there's just so much. It's, as Greg was saying, you know, sometimes it's the zeitgeist that just comes out, or dasingansi, or la práctica es el maestro. It's being able to reach in. Here's how I've expressed it to Greg. I'll just say this. I've expressed it to Greg. Greg says, I don't know how you come up with this stuff. And somehow my brain operates. It's all in RAM. It's all in RAM. It's all right there. I don't know how that works, but all the things are in the RAM, ready to go. And I just, that is my thing. And I'm just lucky that's the way I'm built. It can't be helped. It can't be helped.
The beautiful thing about that, Roy, is that you have quick retrieval for that stuff, but you're willing to retrieve, right?
Yes.
Like you're willing to look forward and share it. So many people are so afraid to share some of that stuff that's inside them and who they are. And authenticity really is being all that and a bag of chips, right? It's sharing.
This is why I mentioned the tequila, Patty, because it comes back to the mixology stuff that I love. You know, a margarita is a very simple drink to make, but so many bar people just don't get the balance right. And that's where you come in. You will always get the balance. I love it. So
that third one wasn't balanced enough. Let's try a fourth one and see if that one's balanced.
Let's try that one. Yeah, look, that little bit of salt was just missing, right? You know. Yeah, exactly. So on that note, because, you know, it's just a little tad empty at the end of France here. So Roy, I'm going to pass it back to our master of ceremonies who opens and closes our collaborations on such a brilliant note. Over to you, Master Roy.
You know, Roy, and I set you up so well. Say something witty, Roy. Say something witty.
Yeah, it's like the comedians who say their friends always say, do something funny. Come on, say something funny. It's very difficult to be able to do that, of course, on the fly. But I will refer back to something that you said, Greg, talking about Jascha Heifetz and how we constantly practice in it. I was reminded then of a story that Frank Sinatra told about Benny Goodman. They were doing a big war bond fundraising thing at Madison Square Garden in New York, and the bands, all the Dorsey brothers and Sinatra and Benny Goodman and all of these great big bands and jazz bands from the era. And off in a corner, Sinatra sees Benny Goodman with his clarinet just playing away. And he walked over and he said, "Benny, why is that train going by right now?" That's what he said. No, he said, you know, come on, Benny, everybody's having coffee and talking to each other and chatting and telling jokes, and we don't get to see each other ever. And what are you doing over here playing your clarinet? And Benny Goodman just looked at Sinatra and he says, well, this way, if I'm not great, at least I'll be good. And it's that process of internalization, just making sure that the fundamentals are there, right?
Yeah.
And so, well, we have, as they used to say on Car Talk on public radio, you've wasted a perfectly good hour here on KTLO.
We have found the key to keeping the learning on.
See that? Patty wants to say something. Oh, she's.
So one of my favorite quotes by Leonard Bernstein: to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time.
And not quite enough time. That's exactly right. This lifetime and portions of the next.
Go sing your hearts out, guys.
Yeah, as Shoto said, outside the dojo. So this is it. Another week has gone by. And again, the episode number has gone up by one. A week goes by, it goes up by one. Unbelievable. Speaking of mathematics, how does that happen? We're not sure. But thank you for listening, watching, whatever it was that you did. what we were on. Totally up to you. If you were just out there flying your freak flag, that's fine.
You do
too.
you be you.
You be
Go
you.
do you.
You be you. And I will say, though, that we are forming a band called the Complex Adaptive System. That's, I think, a perfect name for a band because that's exactly what a band is.
That's exactly what it is.
Right. So
Sadly, all I know how to play are the spoons, but that
You're-
should be interesting.
You're
yes,
in.
okay.
No
All
problem
right.
with that. Just
Nah.
hit those thighs.
See you next time on KTLO. Keeping
Keeping
the
the
learning.
Learning
learning
on.
on.